Hello, everyone. Welcome to this special episode of Offbeat. I have with me here on the program today Dr. Samir Dalwai, who is a well known developmental pediatrician. He is the MD and founder of New Horizons Development Center in Mumbai, and he's been treating children with autism for over 2 decades. Also known as an innovator who has challenged traditional methods followed across the globe for autism with innovation and ingenuity. Warm welcome to you, Dr. Dalwai. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Good morning, Mr. Frida. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
My pleasure as well. So you've also been writing for a number of respected publications. I've read a couple of your articles. You've written on a host of issues relating to parenting and childhood and autism. In fact, I wanted to start with the latest article on the magazine Outlook. I found it very interesting. The headline that says "A simple hug matters." I want to, in fact, start with that. The entire piece that you have written, of course, is very insightful, highly informative. But about the hug, about the fact that you decided to caption it "A simple hug matters," is it really that simple? Are you a believer of Jadoo Ki Jhappi?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer of Jadoo Ki Jhappi, but the hug is actually a metaphor, if you look at it. Because you can't just, you can speak nicely, you can have a fake smile perhaps, you can have fake eye contact, but it's very difficult for somebody to give someone a fake hug. And it's very easy to make out if the hug is fake or not quite right.
Okay.
So for a parent to give a simple hug to the child, lots of things have to be clarified in the parent's mind. And if you note here, we began by talking about the parent, not the child. Because I'm a firm believer, whether any child or a child with some so-called special needs or a child with autism or whatever, it's not the child that we should target. It's us. It's the parents. It's the society. I believe very firmly my life's work has been to prove the importance of how we can change and how small changes, small bits of differences here and there make a huge difference in the child's life over a prolonged period of time. So that's why the Jadoo Ki Jhappi.
Yes. In this article, you have addressed a couple of very important issues, mental health issues, and the suicide figures that have been quoted in this article is also quite alarming. And we know that in this country, we are dealing with adolescent suicides on a regular basis. Just yesterday, there was a suicide reported from Kota again infamous for student suicides. If you can share with our viewers what your observation has been in this regard, what pushes children, adolescents to that kind of a dark chamber that they feel that there is no escaping other than death?
You very rightly, like you said, you mentioned that city and you said infamous for suicides, but it's also famous for something else. It's very famous for getting good performance and good marks. So does it strike a note? These two things together, high performance and high rates of suicide. And this is known. Actually, I'm just digressing maybe, but even in medical circles, it's known that anesthetists and intensivists have a very high rate of suicide as compared to even other people, because they're always on the edge. So one of the reasons why otherwise people without any other problem may contemplate this is because they're always on the edge, and it's like a bow and an arrow. If you have drawn, ancient wisdom told us that if you keep the bow drawn forever, it's going to lose its vitality. And you have to let go. After you shoot an arrow, Arjun wants to hit the eye of the parrot, let go of the string, let the bow relax. Then it will serve you again. So the mind or the body, whatever, even your body, it's like that. If it's constantly running and top gear, it's not humanly, physiologically possible for any organism to function like that. After all, we are not the earth and the moon and the stars and the sun and the satellites that celestially we are going to keep going around, right? We are mortal. We have views that's burning away. And hence, it's very important to understand that as far as the city that you explained, there it's a hothole, I would say, for stress. Now, if you have that, but that doesn't mean that everybody does that, right? There are still so many high performers who get away without harming themselves. How does it work? Because there's always the host factor. So if the person or the child or the student himself is already not adept at handling stress, then it's going to kick in more. If he's not already or she's not already very happy in life, then it's going to kick in more. In other words, if the person is not already content and knows how to deal with the stresses in life, then it's going to be a difficult challenge there. Which means, if you are talking about children, all these things, seeing that the child develops a happy temperament, seeing that the child has good resilience, and that's the key what we'll come up again with, seeing that the child is able to cope with different stresses and yet find a way out and deal with failure. That's the most important thing. If the child hasn't grown up being able to imbibe all this, and then he ends up in a marks or a performance factory, then he's more likely to get it. The final thing, there are some short high risk factors. Children who come from a troubled background, from a disadvantaged society, obviously children in Kota are not from a disadvantaged society, but some familial issues at home, some marital problems in the parents, some familial issues, some history of developmental disorders in the child himself, maybe some hyperactivity, maybe some impulsivity, maybe some history of suicides in the family itself. So just like alcoholism, there's supposed to be a so-called suicide gene, but it's not sure if there's a gene or the fact that you're exposed to that line of thinking. But finally, the last, the straw that breaks the camel's back is hopelessness. If the last step is hopelessness, that I have nothing to live for and there is no hope ever, that is what pushes the child there. So I think these are the factors that rather than making the child the target and saying that the child has to do all that, we as families, as parents, as societies, as teachers have to be, and media have to be very careful in imbibing this in parents. So it's preventable, obviously, and we should look at it from that point of view.
Yeah, I mean, that reminds me, there's this opening line to your article which says it is hopelessness even more than pain that crushes the soul, by William Stryan. So I think that strikes just the right note and explains what you just elaborated for us. I picked up a couple of key words that you mentioned, and I want to go through them one by one. First is, how much of it do you attribute to parental pressure? Because in the Indian dynamics, what happens is the parent child dynamic, as I understand it as a mother myself, is very different from anywhere else in the world. We tend to be over involved, over attached, from my understanding. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. And then what happens is the child carries the burden of somehow by hook or by crook trying to make their parents proud because they have sacrificed so much, and the parents leave no opportunity to drive it down to their children that so much we have given up for you, this is what we have done for you, and then you send them to an isolated place. Obviously they're insulated from everything else, they're not allowed to do things which a regular adolescent would do, right? Like no movies, no hanging out, no games, just a rigorous schedule of constant studying. I mean, doesn't it sound a recipe for disaster? I mean, how can you force adolescents? I'm raising two kids myself. How can you force kids into that kind of a penance? How do we break away from this? Because there will be suicides reported, but that system will continue. And it's not just Kota, it's everywhere else, Dr. Dalwai.
No, you're right, Afrida. I often have these discussions with you, and it helps me also formulate my thoughts to write. So thanks so much. It's always very important to have a parent perspective, and that's the advantage, because in the clinic or the OPD every day we are meeting tens of parents and discussing. You used a very important term called parental pressure. All right. I want to address that term by asking, what do you mean? Pressures exerted by the parent on the child, or the pressures that exist on the parent themselves? Parental pressure is, according to me, the pressure that the parents face.
Yes.
And of course, then they pass it on to the child. So we have to address the parents and not look at them as the culprits, but look at them as the victims as well.
Okay.
Because when you're growing up, I mean, as a student, like, let me take my example. I mean, I grew up, I went to a medical college. So always we grew up with the pressure of performance. Now, and you are lucky enough, you succeed. And then you want to think that that's the normal for your next generation as well. That is the pressure that is already ingrained in you. And then, of course, amongst doctors, you see your peers now, you are all medical students now, all of you are doing well, as in practice, maybe you're doing a little better than the others. And then your kids come into the picture. So his kid is doing better than mine. There is bound to be some kind of...
Are you saying there's a status symbol involved, attached to the children?
Absolutely. Without knowing. You can recognize the fact that a Mercedes a status symbol. Oh no, I'm beyond all this. I don't need a Mercedes to show that. But with your children, you may not, because a child is obviously far more closer to you than a Mercedes, and you can separate yourself from a vehicle, but not from your child, because you see your child, yourself in your child. So this definitely is what I'm going to talk about, is how do parents handle the stress themselves. The idea to understand here is that you are an individual. Not all the people in your children, all the guys in your class performed the same way as you did. More importantly, not everybody who got the same amount of marks performs equally well in society. There are some who may not have done well in my class, in school or college, but they are doing far better in happiness and success. So, what are the parameters of success, and what is the perimeter you're going to enclose it in? Both. If success, according to yourself, is materialistic, is performance based, is target based, then your thinking becomes like that, and you carry it home. And your parents, your kids see you as a high achiever, somebody who's always focused on a particular target. Like John Lennon said, that I was asked, John Lennon, the Beatles, and the philosopher, I would say, he said that my teacher in school asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? So he asked everybody. Somebody said doctor, somebody engineer, somebody whatever else. He said, so teacher asked him, what do you want to be when you grow up? He said, happy. So the teacher says, you haven't understood my question. So John Lennon said, you haven't understood my answer.
How nice.
I think this is very important for parents to imbibe themselves. What makes me happy? What is the parameter of my happiness? What do I do every day to make myself happy? And if you do that, obviously it can't be a secret. So your kids and your family, everybody sees that. And I think that's a very big way of changing the parameter that your kids are growing up with, the compass that they're going to set their lives by. And the career can't be the compass to set your life by. This has to be ingrained in the family, and hence parents have to be aware that they have peer pressure. Who? The parents, not the kids. That you are aware that amongst your peer circle, your kids are doing something or the other, or you also feel that in a country like perhaps like ours or any, you need to be very very competent. Parents come and tell me, डॉक्टर साहब ये आप बोलते हैं सब सुनने के लिए ठीक है, ओशो के सरमन्स हम भी सुनते हैं, मगर आज की दुनिया में अगर आप फर्स्ट नहीं आओगे, फॉर एवरी सीट देयर आर a lakh of students who are applying, and there are only 10 seats that maybe 10 lakh students have to vie for. How does my child get it?
Yes.
You are putting your child down the barrel of a gun by making him look at that statistics, by making him feel that you are good. I'll just make this point, that you are good only if you are amongst the top 1 or the top 10, amongst 10 lakhs. You are setting his parameter so narrow. So narrow. May not be possible for various things. Suppose you have a viral fever a day before your exam. You are the champion, you are slated. And Sachin Tendulkar doesn't score a century every time he goes out to walk. The greatest, Donald Bradman, did not have an average of 100. He got out on 0 on the last match he played. So what do you mean by success? It is not only up to you. It is up to everybody around you that contributes to your success. And it cannot be defined as one performance on one particular day, and certainly not the same brilliant performance every time you are playing or performing or writing an exam. I think parents have to...
extremely distressing is that we are losing meritorious children. And this happens with parents of meritorious children, because they feel that, okay, my child is bright, and therefore these are the only 2-3 careers where he can excel without having that sort of financial backing, which I don't have. So it's medical, engineering. These are like, the sought after professions, which because of the limited exposure also sometimes parents feel are the safest bet to secure your future. Bas medical mein ghus jao, doctor ban jao, to bas tumhara, if you're a doctor yourself, you're probably aware the kind of, how coveted it is considered to get into a medical college or an engineering college. My question to you is that we are losing these bright young minds who are pushed there. I mean, beyond quota, I picked up another word from what you said about dealing with failure. As parents, have we failed to process failure, to understand failure, and to make our children understand how failure is just as important? Because all of this is happening because somewhere I feel we have not learned how to deal with failure. We only know success. We don't understand the merits of failure.
I'll come back to that, but you also said about the fact that we want a child to keep performing that way. And you said the high performers have a higher stress. you'll be surprised to know that there are many parents who come and tell me that my child doesn't get motivated at all to study better. I'm sure he's not going to do well in his career. I ask them, but is he happy? Yeah, he's happy. He's chilled out. Now, if he's happy smoking and drinking and being irresponsible, then that's another problem. But he's happy, yeah. But what does so I asked them, how is he at home? Oh, he's the best kid. He's very, polite to others. He's very good with his grandparents. He loves to go and meet his, relatives and spend time with his friends, and everybody loves him. But he's just not motivated to get marks. I mean, you are a lucky guy to have a child like that, I would say, who has his priorities right. And that's why when you say about failure, see, somebody has said that you set up your child for failure in life when you don't let them fail early. And I've written, that's the last paragraph of that article in the Outlook,
Yes.
which they asked me to write, is that parenting is not driving the car yourself or backseat driving. Parenting is letting the child handle the wheel with you sitting besides.
Yeah.
And taking over the moment the child is faltering. But the moment the ship is steady, you need to give the wheel back to the child. You don't need to keep driving, neither do you need to keep sitting behind. So when we talk of resilience in the child, let me say how it correlates to the parent. It correlates by the parent understanding that, guys, you are not going to be there next to your child all your life. That's the first truth. And the real truth or the real aim of parenting, what I've been always saying, is to have a happy child and a contented child, and a child who can lead a good life after you're gone, not while you're there. So you may provide as much as you want, funds or whatever else. It doesn't mean the child is going to be a success. There are enough stories of children who inherit huge properties but end up as total failures. And who said that everybody who passes out of medical college well with a good education is happy? You think there are no suicides amongst doctors? You think there is no unhappiness amongst doctors or engineers or lawyers or everybody? So the point is, what we need to focus on is the fact whether your child is able to take things in his stride, both failure and success. Like Rudyard Kipling said, both are imposters and may I meet them the same way. So the idea is to observe how your child behaves when he has failed, not when he has succeeded. We are very happy. Okay, if you do this, I'll get you a XYZ, or I'll throw a party for you. You need to be very aware. If you don't succeed, or if you don't get these kind of marks, or if you get only these much marks, what will we do? It's usually, okay, we'll punish you or we'll take away something. That's not the point. If a child is failing, it means he lacks something. Your job is to provide that, help the child catch up with it and move out, and then see how he does it. That is a good captain. You look at Mahendra Singh Dhoni. I mean, that's what leadership is all about. And I think parenting is also about leadership. He always said that I never spoke too much or trained my team too much. But when they were faltering, like he would say that when this bowler was struggling, I would run up as a wicketkeeper, talk to him at the end of the over, and that's it. I wouldn't go to him after every ball because that stresses him out. But I would know what to tell him that would help him. Parents are not, all of us are not Dhonis. If you don't know what is the right thing to say or do, the best thing to do at that moment is not say anything at all, not do anything at all. Wait, talk to your friends, talk to your peers, talk to your seniors, talk to somebody's advice you like, and then come back and deal with that with your child. There is no need to react. And I think the biggest problem is, as parents who are achievers themselves, in the office, somebody comes and asks me, oh, this is a problem, I need to give an immediate answer because I'm the CEO. In life, that translates the same way. Parents think the child is facing a problem, I need to give an instant answer. No, you're not a CEO in the house as well. You're not an expert in human behavior as well, and you don't need to be.
So parents learn to back off is what you're saying. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Know when to back
off. Let me tell you, I see small children about 4 years old, 5 years. So I see children who obviously have a bit of a social communication disorder or autism, and they come in. And I ask, is your child speaking well enough? Mostly the mom would say, yes, she's Rahul, ye karke dikhao, Rahul, daughter ko namaste karo, Rahul, say good morning, Rahul, pick up this color, show red color, show blue color. So relax. How much are you talking? How much are you talking? You are overstimulating the child. In fact, I've come up with a new term, I'll probably write it in the next article, called the overstimulation syndrome. We are overstimulating our children, and that is making our normal, typical, good children getting into a problem.
Yeah. I'm going to come to that. I'm interrupting you here because we have about 6.5 minutes left on this, because it's very important for you to tell us about you. Let's focus now on your area of expertise, which is autism. And you've told me a number of times that there are a lot of things that need to be challenged the way we have been doing it, and you've done it yourself. You've written about it. What is the biggest evolution in the thinking, when it comes to autism?
Frankly, there has been no evolution since Dr. Leo Kanner described 11 cases in 1943. And the only evolution, I mean, the problem is that after 80 years, it's 2023 now, we still begin by believing that autism cannot get better or cannot get cured or cannot be different, cannot become normal. The trouble is when we set our parameter at, okay, this can never be normal. It's all very nice to say, okay, we are empathetic and all. Okay, I understand that. Absolutely, that's important. Not to make somebody feel abnormal. But my point is giving them a cane or a stick to walk or putting somebody on a wheelchair, make sure that he can never walk on his own. So the first thing that we need to challenge is, yes, we know that there's no cure because it's not a disease. But can I make my child functionally normal? That's the first evolution we need. Second, even more important, what do we mean by functional normality? Does it mean if my child can sit quietly in a corner in the classroom without disturbing others, okay, he's going to school, is that normal? Or if my child can recite and repeat poems and lessons and numbers, because anyway, children with autism have a patterned behavior. If you can recite Shakespeare, is that all right? So let me tell you what I mentioned. Just on Sunday, I was in a conference in Delhi. And at the end of my talk, the chairperson asked me, Dr. Samir, what is high functioning autism? So I said, according to the US, a high functioning autism is somebody who can recite the latest share market figures or who can recite the latest news or tell you the names of the dinosaurs. According to me, a high functioning individual is somebody who can go and stay with Chachi, Masi, Bua, and Mami. I'm saying them in Hindi because in English we call them auntie and uncle. But I'm saying specifically Chachi, Bua, Masi, and Mami. These four women are different. They are not from the same family. But between these four women, you have the whole combination of the whole world. So a high functioning child is who can go and stay with a Chachi, Mami, Bua, and Masi for 2 or 3 days on his own without the mother. This is my definition of high functioning individual, because he can deal with these four households without the mother being there. It covers the entire spectrum of the world. There you go. These four women cover the entire. If he can handle them, then he can go to a school and handle a teacher who is also somewhat like a mix of his Chachi and Masi maybe.
But I like this about you, Dr. Dalwai, that you simplify it in a way, making it very understandable, the kind of analogies that you present. I'm going to ask you one more question because I have 3 minutes on the program. I have to ask you this because this is what is being discussed very widely among parents. One is screen time. I know that you've done a lot of work, a lot of workshops, seminars on this issue, challenges that parents are facing. The second challenge is the gender sensitivity and the sexual orientation issue. How is it that a child of 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old have started saying, I identify myself as a woman, even though I'm maybe born as a man?
So don't even get me started on that one. So I'm just going to address the screen issue.
Okay, quickly on these.
There are so many aspects of screen time that parents are already aware of. It's there on YouTube. I started writing in my prescription by hand, no screens, 12 years ago. When I was criticized for saying this. The problem with screen times is you are starting it very young, at 4 months, 5 months, where you're putting an iPad with poems or nursery rhymes so that the child can eat. The biggest problem there is you're cutting away human interaction and bringing in an object interaction. And that is what is worsening the child's behavior, because he does not have enough experience dealing with people. And he's on screen the whole day. He doesn't meet Chachi, Masi, Mama, Chacha, Nana. So he doesn't develop the resources or the capacity in the brain to deal with close relatives. Close relatives are similar to your parents. So this is Lev Vygotsky's theory of zone of proximal development. The child grows like a creeper on the fence. He holds on to the next rung and climbs ahead. The child develops social interaction by knowing how to deal with mummy, daddy, then chacha, chachi, mama, mami, masi, then distant cousins, then the neighbors who in Bombay, one is Malayali, one is Bengali, one is Marathi, one is Gujarati. So the child's capacity at human interaction grows, but slowly in good capacity, and then he can manage it in school, which is the last part of the child to do it. Today, unfortunately, we have this terrible, what I call, jump from cradle to classroom, and we have bypassed the entire neighborhoods. So this is creating a problem in the child who goes to school. He doesn't know how to behave. The last thing, Afrida ji, I may say, is, when you travel, when did you last travel by a flight? Maybe last week. What do they say in the beginning? कि हवा का दबाव कम होने पे ऑक्सीजन मास्क नीचे गिरेंगे. बच्चों की सहायता, दूसरों की सहायता करने के पहले आप
अपने खुद मास्क पहनो पहले.
If you don't survive, how will you help others? Yes. Parents, please understand this. This is about you, not about the child. You need to take care of yourself. And especially in India, the woman, Mother India banna hai, sabko ya banana hai. Poor thing. She has to be a good wife. She has to be a good mother. So she has to be a martyr. Mother India banna hai. Don't give this up.
Yeah.
It's not
so
your
I think
sole
responsibility. Another question for another program, because that's a huge topic. It would be unfair to squeeze you in 1 minute and say, okay, give me answer to this as well. But thank you so much, Dr. Samir Dalwai. You gave us some very interesting insights, and I hope parents who are watching will benefit from this. These are very simple things. The idea is to understand it holistically. The idea is to see through sometimes and see where it's coming from sometimes. That's what I do as a mother. It has helped me, and of course, you have helped me a lot, especially in the fact about interactions, and how I have also made sure that my children have more human to human social interactions to keep them away from the screens. On that note, thanks very much. Thank you for your time. Appreciate your joining me today on this episode of Offbeat.
Thank you very much.